UH, this is Unit 7, Lesson 10, and today we're going to talk about right triangles and similarity. So we already looked at this back at a previous lesson. I had a right triangle and I drew the altitude. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on right here. So let's look at this right triangle. I have right triangle ABC, okay, and I have right triangle DEF. And the question is, how do I know that they are similar to each other? Now remember, to be similar, I need angle. So if you look at this, I know angle B is congruent to angle E because they're right angles. Okay, and I also know angle A is congruent to angle D because they both equal 35 degrees. So therefore, the triangles are similar by angle. Okay, so basically, anytime you have two right triangles, you just need one more angle to be congruent in order for them to be similar, because the right angles are going to count as one of those angles. So any two right triangles with a pair of congruent acute angles will be similar to each other. And I think that makes sense. So in exercise 2, we have our diagram just like we had in the earlier lesson. I have triangle ABC, which is a right triangle. The altitude has been drawn, so this is an altitude. An altitude is a line drawn from the vertex perpendicular to that opposite side, and it creates two additional triangles. So I have three triangles here. I have this outermost triangle, which is triangle ABC, and then I have the two triangles inside. So I got this triangle in here, that smaller one, then I have this medium-sized triangle, and then I have the big triangle. Okay, so I got three triangles going on. I want to know, why is ABC, which is the big one, similar to ACD? Well, they both have a right angle, and they both share angle A. All right, here's a right angle in that smaller orange triangle. Here's a right angle in the big purple triangle. Why is ABC similar to CBD, the small yellow one? Well, again, they both have a right angle, and they both share angle B. All right, so now why can you argue that ACD, which is the orange one, is similar to CBD, which is the yellow one? Well, if they're both similar to triangle ABC, which is the big one, then they have to be similar to each other. All right, they're both similar to triangle ABC, so they are similar to each other. So when I have a right triangle, all right, and I have a altitude drawn from the vertex of that right triangle, it creates two more triangles, and those three triangles are all similar to each other. All right, draw the two smaller triangles in the same orientation. So let me draw this, the orange one right here, and I'll make that orange, and I'll draw that yellow one right there. All right, so let me just color them so you know that they're the same one. So there's the orange one, and then my yellow one is right here. And let's put the letters on there so you know what's what. So in the orange one, the right angle is at D, okay, and A is up there, and C is down there. And then again, in the smaller yellow one, D is right there, and B is right here, and that leaves C right there. Okay, so now that they're all drawn in the same way, it's easy to set up the proportion, but you can see that these have been rotated and reflected. So setting up the proportion, because the sides are in proportion, I know they're similar, is kind of tricky to do. So I'm going to give you a way to do it in a second. But for now that I've redrawn them, because you don't want to always be redrawing them, AD is 8, BD is 2, and now I want to find the length of CD and BC. All right, and I feel like I'm missing some information right here. So AD is 8, and they share DC right here. So they have that same side right there. Okay, so I'm just going to do 8 over X and X over 2. So you can see, like, the base of one triangle is actually the height of the other triangle. I cross multiply, and I have X squared equals 16. Therefore, x equals 4. All right, so that's 1. So these problems can be tricky, especially because there are 3 similar triangles that are going on. 2 of the 3 lie inside the larger one. So one rule is anytime you have the altitude, you're just going to set up a proportion. The altitude's going to go in the bottom left and the top right, and the other 2 parts of the proportion are going to be part of the hypotenuse and the other part of the hypotenuse. So here's an example with sides right there, so you can see the altitude is CD, so the altitude is going in the bottom left and top right. Part of the hypotenuse goes on the left, top left, and the other part of the hypotenuse goes in the bottom right. So that's the altitude rule. This is the altitude, and this is your hypotenuse. The leg rule is going to use the leg. Now it depends which leg that you're using, but the leg is going to go in the bottom left and top right. The whole hypotenuse is going to go in the top left, and the projection is just the part of the hypotenuse next to the leg that I'm talking about. So again, if I'm talking about this leg, I would use this part of the hypotenuse. If I was talking about the leg on the right, I would use that part of the hypotenuse. All right, so let's look at some examples just so this makes sense to you. So this is my right triangle, so this is a hypotenuse, this is a leg, this is a leg, and this is the altitude. So I'm obviously going to use my altitude rule. So the altitude is x, the altitude goes in the bottom left, top right, and the altitude rule, let's scroll up, says I'm using part of the hypotenuse, other part of the hypotenuse. So I'm just going to use the left part of the hypotenuse, the right part of the hypotenuse, cross multiply, and solve. So that's 1. The second one, now this is again a leg, the hypotenuse, the altitude. I don't have the altitude, I'm not trying to find the altitude. I have the leg, so I'm going to use the leg rule. The leg goes in the bottom left, top right. Now with the leg rule, you use the whole hypotenuse, which is 8, and then the part that's next to the leg. So again, you cross multiply, x squared equals 16, and x equals 4. So we will practice those 2 rules tomorrow.